Okay. We are in Parshas Vayakel. The fifth reading. It's very short today. Actually, I don't think there's any Rashi today. Yeah, only some verses, no Rashi. Why? Because it's a repetition from Parshas Truma. So it's a repetition of the sanctuary and the implements. We're going to speak about the Manora now, the candelabra, and so on. Why is it repeated so much? Because to make a home for God is a central focus and central idea of the Torah, right? Of our duty. Okay, so we're in chapter 37, verse 17. Sixth reading, V'yas es ha-menorah zohav tohar, and he made the menorah, the candelabra. Zohav is gold, tohar, pure gold. Miksha asa is a menorah. It was hammered out. Miksha means it was hammered out, the menorah. In other words, one big block of gold and hammered out from it, its base. Well, sculpting, yes, hammering, sculpting, because sculpting, you're going to still solder together pieces. Hammering out is how you're going to make it from one piece. Yeah. Sculpting will not be sufficient, right? It's the hammering out. Not that I know what that means exactly, how they did that, but anyways, it's base, the stem, its goblets, its knobs and flowers are all one piece with it, right? Let me just show you the picture once again. And once again, where is the picture? Here it is. This is the menorah, right? So you've got here, these are flowers, this is a knob, and that's cups. And there's flowers on top, knobs in a cup, yes. All right. Continuing. 6 branches are coming out from its sides. 3 branches are coming out from the menorah on one side. And 3 branches are coming out from the second side. And there's 3 decorated goblets. Givim means goblets. Mishukadim means that they are decorated. On one branch, there's a knob, kafter is a knob, and a perach. Perach is flour, and 3 decorated goblets. It's on the menorah. It's not a goblet. It's decoration of the menorah. Right? We had a Torah studies on it that the goblets, according to the Rambam, were upside down. That the purpose of the menorah, its purpose is light to illuminate the world. Just like a cup, its purpose is not to hold the contents, but the purpose is the purpose and functionality is to drink from the cup, right? So when you drink from the cup is the opening is upside down, right? When you're holding the liquid, it is right side up, but the cups were narrow and wide on the outside to bring out the idea of that the purpose of the menorah is to bring its light, not for itself, not for the Mishkan. The sanctuary didn't need that light. God doesn't need that light. Who needs the light? The world needs God's light. So therefore, the goblets that were on it were upside down. That's according to the Rambam and Rashi. Right? So that's the goblets that it's speaking about over here, right? So there were... verse number 20, of Manora arba givim, and on the stem. So that was speaking about the branches, all 6 branches, 3 on one side, 3 on the other side. But then there is the stem, right, which means there were 7 lights on the menorah. On its stems of the menorah, there were 4. Arba givim mishukadim kaptera v'arechecha. There are 4 decorated goblets, and its knobs and its flowers. 21. Kafta tachas shnei hakonim, and there was a knob under the 2 branches from it. Yeah, well, let's finish off the verse first. So there was a knob under the 2 branches from it. In other words, from each branch, right? You see, there's a knob over here. 1, 2, 3, right? From that's sort of like the connector of the branches, right? So one knob extending from it to 2 branches. So there was 1 knob from each 2 branches. So there's 3 knobs and 6 branches as a result, right? So their knobs and their branches were all one piece with it, as it were hammered from a mass of pure gold. And they also made lamps. The lamps are on the top over here, right? Holding the oil, right? 7 of them. And tongs and scoops, right? Tongs to pull out the wick, and scoops to take out the ashes. I check. Thank you. Kikar Zahav Tohar. It was made from a talent of pure gold. Also, he said they made it as called Keleha and all of its implements. Yasis and Mizbeh. Okay, so we're finished with the menorah. Now we're going to the altar. And this is the incense altar. The Yasis, huh? 25, exactly. Huh? All right. Yas is Mizbach HaKeteris, and made the incense altar. I have the booklet over there if you want. We're on verse 25. The incense altar, Mizbach is the altar, HaKeteris is incense. Atze Shitim, it's made from acacia wood. Ama Arka, it was a hand's breadth, 1.5 right, its length. Ama Rachma, and a square, its width, also an ama, Ravua, squared. And they're 2 cubits high, and its horns with it were 1 piece. The Yitzafis Amzav, so again, this is all made from wood. But now the next verse, the Yitzaf Oisa Zahav Tahar, and it was overlaid with pure gold, right? As opposed to the outside altar was from copper, this is from gold, right? Tahar, pure gold, is Gagai Veskiraisav Saviv, is Kanaisav Yasid Loizer Zahav Saviv. So it's Gagai means it's top, right? And it's Kiryaisav, its walls, Saviv all around. And it had horns at the corners, right? Vyasko, the Zerzov, Saviv also made a golden crown around it. Find the picture. Okay, well, I'll have to look. Okay. And the 2 golden rings were made for it. Under the zera, which is the crown, Al shtei tzoloisav on the two corners, al shnei tzidav on two sides, levatim levadim, bahem, that their holders, these rings, right, two golden rings that were on its two corners, two on each, that were then put the poles through it to carry it. And he made the poles out of acacia wood and overlaid it with gold. And he made also holy anointing oil out of pure incense. This was a work of the art of the rekeach. The translates perfumer over here. Let's see the Rebbe's commentary on this. Huh? Yeah, Okay, so let's we're gonna now address the name of the parsha, Vayakel, which means to congregate. So it's known, says the Rebbe, the name of the parshas of the Torah parshas, they're not called because it's the beginning. In other words, it's the first word or so, right? But it's called the name because of its connection to the content of the Torah portion, right?
Quite often it's the first. Quite often it is the first word.
Yeah, sometimes it is. Yeah, you're right. Like this week's Torah portion, right?
This is a Yakel he assembled.
No, Kohol. The Kohol is a congregation. Kahal Israel, right? Jewish congregation.
Yakel Moshe he assembled. Moshe assembled. No?
Huh? Oh, it's active, right? Okay, it's right, right, yeah. Okay, the word call, right? It's an assembly that he assembled, right? Exactly. Yes, it's an active, right? An active verb as opposed to the noun, right? Correct. So it's not called the name just because it happens to be at the beginning of the Torah portion, but again, it has to do with the content, right? So therefore, we need to understand. So here the Rebbe is actually there's two parshas. We have them split today. Usually, Vayakel and Pekudei come together, right? It's a leap year, so there's an extra month. So there's, but even so, they're separated, but yet often they come together. So we need to understand also the content of them, and they're one after the other. So Vayakel is describing the making of all of the specific things, the different things of the sanctuary, the Mishkan, the vessels, the implements, and all of its details, right? As opposed to in next week's Torah portion, Pekudei, it's going to be giving us the the sum total of things, right? Now we have all the details. Next week will be the sum total of it, right? In other words, how much gold, how much silver, right? In weight, it's in weight. Yes. It's not in US dollars. Right? So if that's the case, says the Rebbe, it would be fitting that this week's parsha, Vayakel, right, which is speaking about the details, it should be called Pikude, because Pikude means accounting, right? What does an accountant do? Each number, an accountant needs to, the details is what matters for in an accounting, right? If you're off by $1, right, then your accounts don't. What's the term at the end of the month? They don't balance, right? You need to be able to balance. So in other words, they only balance if you take into consideration every single detail. So our parsha is speaking about the details. We just went through the details of the menorah, how many goblets there were, how many knobs there were, right? And all that kind of detail. So the name of the parsha should be Pikude, which means the accounting of everything, right? The number of everything. And as far as the forthcoming parsha, that's speaking about the sum total of things, then that would be Vayakel, which means to congregate, to assemble. In other words, the full, the total assembly of the Jewish people, which then is the totality of the assembly of the of all of all the total amounts of what was given. So it seems to be the complete opposite, right? Is that clear? So the Rebbe says, and they sent us this is the answer. Our parsha is speaking about the details of all of the division, all of the implements, all of the different things that were part of the Mishkan, right? This is all before putting together the Mishkan, right? In other words, it's all being made now, but it's all separate things. It's not one entity of a Mishkan yet, right? So, interesting. In other words, its intent in making it is in order that it should be one thing, one entity. That's its intent. It wasn't there yet. But the intent in its making is that you have one home for God, one Mishkan, one sanctuary, right? That's the intent. In other words, the intent in the building of it is that it should be a complete whole entity, right? That's what, which would be a home for God. That's why the parsha is called Vayakel. Because after all of the work, the different divisions of work, its intent was only one thing, putting it together as one home for God. It's only in the next parsha, after all of the division of the Mishkan were brought together, and now it becomes a complete sanctuary, did it fall upon it the holiness, right? When does the holiness when does it ensue, or when does it fall upon it, is only when all the details are coming together as one whole. Once the holiness is there, therefore, then each vessel now becomes uniquely special, because each vessel now has its performance or its function to perform, and therefore it becomes a holy vessel. Only once it's part of the whole, right? Is that clear? Therefore, the parsha is called Pikude, which is the details. In other words, once it now becomes part of a whole, the details become significant. The details become significant.
Wall,
Hmm?
you make a curtain, and you have a wall. How are they connected to be one? Just design or?
No, it's one in its purpose. It's one in its purpose. So the Rebbe is explaining like this. It's a profound idea. You're making all of the details of something, right? But it doesn't come together yet until you put it together. So you're making an altar, you're making an aron, you're making a menorah, but they're all separate entities, right? The intent in it is there isn't anything unifying it at the moment until you put it together as a mishkan, right? But in our parsha, it's not coming together, right? So therefore, its intent though is the coming together, right? So that's why the parsha is called Vayakel, because the Vayakel is the assembly of coming together, right? So its intent is that. Yet, it's only next week's parsha when we have everything that it's put together. Once it's put together, right? Now the details become significant because now they become a function that could be used in a holy manner. Because once it's all together functioning as one entity, as a mishkan, as a home for God, right? Now there's holiness that befalls it. Now that there's holiness on the entirety, it's also holiness on the individuality of it. So therefore, the menorah becomes holy, and therefore the tongs become holy. All of it becomes holy. It's not holy in its making. In its making, it's only the intent that it should become that, right? So the intent is v'yakel, assembly all together as one, right? So that's its intent. But the functionality of it doesn't become holy yet until you have it all and you put it together as all. When you put it together as one entity, this Mishkan, this home for God, now falls upon it the holiness. Now that the Kedusha falls upon it as a collective whole, it also falls on the individual parts of it, right? And therefore now it could be a functioning home for God, right? So therefore, that's why the next week's parsha is called Pikude, which is the accounting, meaning the details. Because the details of what was done in our parsha are now only imbued with holiness once you have the completion of it, the totality of it. And that's what next week. Very interesting. Hope you got that. And if you didn't,
So it becomes functional when they first give the sacrifice, and then it's complete.
it's complete with putting it together.